What's up, everybody? Welcome. We are now pretty far into day 3 of NamesCon Online Fall 2021, and it has been a great day so far. I know here on track 2, we've had a lot of incredible content, beginning with the very intro session with Ron Jackson, and all the way up into the last session that we had, the match game. I think track 2 has been great too. As a reminder, for any sessions that you missed because you're here enthralled with what we've going on track 1, which as you should be, but you can catch what happened on track 2 and on track 3 because all those sessions are recorded, played back about 24 hours later. So that way you don't have to miss any of the fun activity, any of the information, any of the incredible content. So with that, we've got some really, really cool stuff coming up. I love this next session. I am super excited about this one. It is a super smart and eclectic group that can really nail what the whole topic is, which is don't at me, bro. What we learned about millennial shopping behavior on domains versus social media, which is such a key thing for anybody who's selling online. So obviously, and anybody involved in domains, this is going to be a really, really interesting session with a lot of really, really smart people. So with that, let me bring up the one and only Brooke Edge, who's going to moderate this session.
Hi.
Brooke, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm very, very good. Just living the dream here on this sunny Friday, NamesCon, all that good stuff. How about yourself?
Doing well. Also, it looks like it's sunny here, so hopefully, I can get a little bit in from the window, but I'm very happy to be here right now.
Excellent. Well, for those of you who don't know, Brooke is legitimately an expert on customer behavior. She is a guru, has worked with Google and a whole bunch of other folks on a bunch of different stuff related to consumer behavior and research, and literally could not have picked a better person to moderate this particular panel. So I'm excited to see it. I don't want to take away any more of your thunder. I'll let you kind of dive in and introduce the rest of your panel, but you guys have fun, and I'll catch you guys at the end.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
I think I'm going to get started by presenting results from our team we conducted, I'm going to share my screen. We conducted some research with the Domain Name Association and the I2C, the Internet Infrastructure Coalition. Let me just get this screen sharing worked out.
Hello. While Brooke is doing that, I'll just give a little bit of an introduction. For those of you who are following, the DNA, the Domain Name Association, merged with I2C, the Internet Infrastructure Coalition, I guess a little over a year ago now. And this survey is one of the things that we've done together. And for those who have been members of the DNA from the beginning, as I have and Club has, it's really great to now have the resources, both financial and human, as the I2C has a great team of people behind it to do more to really promote the value and benefits and necessity of domain names across the board. And so this survey is one of the first things that we've done in that regard. And it's really been great to have the resources of the I2C behind us. So Brooke is getting her technical issues solved. So I just wanted to mention that really this is the result of the merger of the Domain Name Association and the I2C. And as such, the Domain Name Association exists as a working group within the I2C, and we definitely encourage I2C members or people who are thinking about joining the I2C to get involved in that working group if you're at all involved in the domain name space. It's a really important piece of the internet puzzle, and we advocate for the continued use of domain names. And as this study will show, a lot of people have always talked about the demise of domain names, since apps have become popular and social media networks, and many businesses are literally having their online presence inside of someone else's house, so to speak, when they use a Facebook page or some other social network as their primary web presence. And so we did this survey to really address that particular question as to what is involved in trust and understanding when it comes to a domain name versus a presence in a social network. So that's the gist of what we're going to be talking about. So Brooke is working away.
I got it. It's up. I'm told that it's being shared.
Then take me away.
Jeff, thank you so much for stepping in. Everyone, I'm so sorry. I will share that I used to be in the university world, and I used to teach to undergrads, and the best year I had was the year my classroom was right next to the IT office, and I ended up bringing them lots of baked goods and things because we called them in many times to help out. Okay. So as was mentioned, this is a partnership to do some primary original research to really get a feel for what's going on online with where people are trusting. So we wanted to know, we wanted to know, first of all, do consumers care about businesses even having a domain? Is this something that mattered to them at all? Secondly, does having a domain increase consumer trust in a business? So we wanted to get at that trust factor. Is that something that they got from it? Third, did that trust then carry over to consumer spending confidence? So does having a domain increase their confidence in sharing personal information, financial information, making their purchases online? And number four, are consumers more comfortable interacting with a business on social in particular sectors? Do certain industries fare better on social than on a domain? What about certain, things you'd be purchasing? Does social have some benefits over domains and not others? So that's what we set in to learn. And also, I just want to call out a note down here that in order to really focus our results, we really focused on consumers between the ages of 25 to 44. So we focused on sort of that millennial to younger Gen X population, both just to really get a better, a tighter survey response, and also because there's a lot of interest in that younger group and their spending habits and their buying power. Here's what we learned. First of all, yes, they do care. So to that point of does it even matter to them? Yes, they do. So consumers really place importance on a business having a domain. The reason why, when we followed up to say, well, why does it matter to you, is because they said that lets them know that it's a legitimate business. To that point about trust, they really do. There's a statistically significant increase in trust for companies that have a domain than those who are just operating on social. And again, when we asked why as a follow-up, there was a feeling that there is less risk of scam or fraud. To that point, the natural follow-up is that then yes, because there's less risk of scam or fraud and increased trust, that consumers really do value purchasing from a domain instead of just a social site. And that went across industries and was especially high for pharma and tech. Finally, when we were looking at, well, does social have some benefits where domain doesn't? Social was really seen as good for making a personal connection with a business. But domains they edged out the social competition, and not even edged out, they blew them out of the water for, in a lot of ways, inspiring more confidence everywhere else in what we asked about online activity, especially in terms of reliability and security. So that's just our executive top summary. Now let's get into some slides about why. So to that point, do consumers care about a business having a domain? Yes, they do. It's important to consumers that a business have its own domain name. We asked on a scale of 1 to 5, how important is it to you that a business have its own domain name rather than just being on social? And it came out at 3.94. And for those of you who might be in the consumer research or survey world like me, that's a resounding yes. Notably, it was even higher. It was significantly higher, about a 4.4 for households with more than $100,000 in house annual income. So the higher their spending and the higher their income, the more importance they placed on that domain name. A third of respondents said a domain is extremely important. So a third of respondents were in that 5 category on a scale of 1 to 5. So a significant number of respondents are in, it's extremely important. It is like incredibly important to me. So then we wanted to know about trust. So what might be behind that importance? A supermajority, so 79% of consumers trust a business with a domain name more than one with only a social presence. And 52% of that, so more than half, are in the I trust the business with a domain name much more. So 79% are either much more or somewhat more, but the largest share of responses we got was much more. We followed it up to ask, well, why? And the responses were largely that a domain indicates the business is legitimate and professional. There are a few quotes up here. And one good one that we called out is that it shows more of a footprint and that it's a business that actually exists. Anyone could set up a social media page for anything. So there's just less concern and more trust here. One other quote we pulled out as a response to this question is a domain name gives your business instant credibility and puts you in the same online marketplace as your largest competitors. It says that you mean business and helps online shoppers and customers see you as a forward-thinking company that is conveniently accessible online. So it's convenience, it's modernity, it's innovation, it's being able to play in the space well, it's credibility. I mean, people are really putting a lot behind why it's more trustworthy to have a domain. We went further and we didn't just say, you know, we didn't just say what's happening, like, do you trust it more or is it important to you? We posed a Smith-Jones question. And to briefly sum up what the style of this question, we put sort of Smith says and thinks this, Jones says and thinks that. Smith essentially says that domain names are a fine but unnecessary expense for a business and doesn't mind a business saving money to just communicate with and sell to its customers via social media and trust social media platforms for purchases. Smith believes a business being only on social helps to connect business to its customers in an easier, faster way. So that Smith is really, I don't care that much. Social's fine. Like, just go the easiest, quickest route. Jones, on the other hand, says domain names are a way to quickly determine trust online, that a business's web name and website are clear reflections of being a real, legitimate business. And Jones believes this indicates an interaction with or purchase from this business will go well and have low risk of any scam or fraud. So Jones is fully on the domain side. And then we asked which opinion is closer to your own. So consumers, even here, then were far more aligned with seeing domain names as a worthwhile investment for conveying legitimacy and trust in spending. So it was a 29% to 71%, 29% Smith, 71% Jones, and 35% exactly like Jones. So again, we just kept seeing it reiterated here. So then, does that trust carry over to spending confidence? It's really important to consumers. Again, the prior one on the 1.5 scale is a 3.94. Here's a 3.92, so almost exactly the same. That an importance that they can purchase from a business's domain rather than a social media site. And again, almost a third said it's extremely important. They're in that 5 category. And again, it was significantly higher, about a 4.4 or 4.5 for households with in the higher income bracket. When we followed up to ask why, they said it's because a domain indicates the business is professional and can be trusted with secure information. So here we're getting the trust carrying over to, well, I've got secure information. I'm nervous about being scammed. And so this is what's going to make me feel comfortable with an online purchase. As this respondent put it, it gives credibility. The site doesn't have to be great, but the mere presence of one is important. So we also wanted to see if this varied by industry. So we saw then the buying on a domain being where they prefer to make purchases. Buying on a domain is the orange. So it's important across industries. It's notably important in the scientific and more expensive realms of pharmaceuticals, electronics and tech, and vehicles and parts. So what's happening right now? So that's when we asked sort of, what do you think? What do you trust? What's important to you? But then we asked about what is their current behavior around business, around domains and businesses on social. Almost all consumers, if they meet a brand for the first time via social media, will try to verify that business's bona fides. How they're doing it is online, often going to their domain name. So if most of these consumers, and again, we're talking to millennials here, young Gen X, 25 to 44, if they encounter a business for the first time on social, their second most common activity for verification is going to a domain name. It's just behind reading consumer reviews. So it's read consumer reviews, go to their domain name, and then search for the business online. So really, they're taking steps outside of social to verify the business. When purchasing via social, most consumers still expect to complete their purchase on a business's domain. We don't know if they, or we ask them, did it end up going through? But this is what they're expecting. So even if they are on a social page and they say they want to buy, they expect that they will be moved off of social onto what they perceive as a legitimate domain name. So then finally, we wanted to get into the perceived benefits of social versus domain business presence. So we asked, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not at all confident, 5 being completely confident, how confident would you be doing the following on a business's social media page? So we asked about, how confident would you feel on social researching, contacting the company, feeling like you'll get a quality product, making a purchase, and sharing my personal information. Social is really seen as best. The edge they have, or the place that they get the higher, more confident ratings, are in the researching and contacting the company and feeling okay about the product. Consumers feel least confident about anything that would then involve PII, or personal identifying information, like making a purchase or sharing personal information. So then we followed up with this and we said, would you feel more confident doing those actions on a business's domain rather than social, if they didn't just have a social presence, but they also had a domain presence you could go to? We found confidence rose significantly for all actions on domain. So even from the things that they said, they feel confident doing on social, like researching, contacting, they all rose. They all had significant percentages of people saying, yes, I would feel more confident. Finally, we asked about, which do you think is better to do which do you feel better about, domain or social, for things like online activities like that you really want in your online experience, like speed, reliability, ease of access, learning more about a business, avoiding ads, and personal connection. The only place it comes together is for personal connection, which makes sense because we're talking social media. So they feel like it'll be easier to make a personal connection with a business, or just about as easy, because they really just came together on social rather than domain. For everything else, we see a delta of more than 30 points up to 74 percentage points for what they feel would be better done on a domain versus on social. So what does it all mean? And the main lessons learned from this that we took away were related to messaging to people who might be interested in purchasing a domain, or who might think, what's the point in having a domain? I'm on social. So the main takeaways here: consumers place a lot of importance on a business's legitimacy, and that they can do that by finding them online on their own domain. So really, that it stressed the role of a domain in legitimacy, especially for higher income consumers. The internet and social savvy younger consumers still prefer to purchase via domain. That's why we stressed the millennial side of this. Even consumers who are raised on social, in their 20s, who have always had the internet around as a way to find businesses and find brands, they don't prefer buying on social. They really still expect to go to a domain, even if they find the brand on social. Trusting a business as valid makes consumers feel secure. So it really gets at deep concerns they have of scam, of fraud, of insecurity. So they're going to feel better on a domain. Your consumers are going to feel like there's much less risk from your business if you have a domain rather than just being on social. they actively seek out domains if they find you on social, as we've mentioned. So even if they find you on social, they're going to go looking for your domain. And then finally, these domain benefits exist across all industries. While some were like more dramatic than others, like pharma and big expenses like tech and auto, even smaller or smaller purchasing was shown to benefit from a domain. So no matter the industry, a domain is going to boost consumer confidence and trust. So I'd like the rest of our panel to come in and help out now that the screen share is done. And we can talk about sort of what this meant to the Domain Name Association and I2C.
Great. Well, if I can chime in first, Jeff Sass with the Club. So I think it was really important topic for the survey to tackle. As I mentioned earlier, when Brooke was futzing with her slides, people have been espousing the demise of domain names ever since apps came around and social networks came around. And I think this survey really reinforces that the importance of having your own presence that you control with the domain name. And I think there are a couple of things that weren't specifically addressed in the survey that are related that I wanted to mention. One is the risk of deplatforming. That's been something that's been a big deal in recent times for people. And if your sole business presence is on a third-party network, you're always at the risk, the risks of being deplatformed are much greater than if you're on a domain name that you can control, because people can file complaints against you, on Facebook or somewhere else that could cause you to be turned off for a period of time, whether they're legitimate or not. And that's something that's much less likely to happen if you're on your own domain name. So I think that's another consideration that's important. And the other is, e-commerce, we saw the shopping trends here in the survey. And, right now we're living through the rise of the micro brands, right? We have so many direct-to-consumer D2C companies, and they all need to have their own domain name. Shopify, arguably one of the more successful tech companies today, has 1 million businesses selling products through their platform, but every one of those needs to have their own domain name, their own presence, so that they can control that. So I think that e-commerce, the risk of deplatforming are all part of this story where, social alone is not enough. Social is part of your marketing, but it's really not your presence on the internet. That should be driven by your dedicated domain name. Thanks.
Yeah, I was going to add that, and thanks to Brooke for that presentation. I'm Alvaro with Donuts, and I was really heartened by the results of the survey, and it actually surprised me in that it exceeded how I felt about domains and the legitimacy and credibility that they bring. But not that anyone on this panel feels this way, especially Brooke. But this isn't a social media versus domains. This is really the tapestry of tools that you have at your disposal if you're growing a business or some sort of organization, as Jeff said earlier. And here, what it's saying, in my eyes, is domains give you a certain credibility, professionalism, accessibility, security, etc., that social really doesn't convey. Social has done tremendous things for small businesses, especially to give connection to their consumers, etc. But it still lacks that next level foundational support that you really get from a domain.
Yeah, I'll chime in there to add just that in another point in the survey that wasn't in this deck, but it was asking just these younger consumers, how often have you purchased from a brand you encountered on social? And a lot of them have. So it's great for discovery. They just feel best when it's also tied then to a legitimate domain.
Yeah, and to pick up on what Jeff said, this is something that we've banged on about at Black Knight for years, and it's nice to have a survey that proves what we've been saying all along, that if you are relying on these platforms for the growth of your business, you're not in control of the growth of your business. The platforms are. So your number one goal should be to get people off these platforms and onto your own platform, whether it's your email marketing list, your website, your other channels that you may have. And we've seen domains become increasingly popular in places like Ireland, where Black Knight is based. The .ie domain name is now more popular than the .com domain name extension. So with Irish consumers, you have that inherent built-in trust by using that .ie domain name. So when they may find you on Facebook, but they're going to expect to go to your website on a .ie domain name and converse with you with .ie, because, and especially in the days of Brexit and the EU and everything, it's very important to have that local identity so that customers know that they're buying from the country they want to be dealing with. They want to know that they're dealing with locals, and it helps that just having the right domain name helps build that trust, and not, you don't necessarily want to put that trust in Mark Zuckerberg 4,000 miles away.
I work with the Canadian International Pharmacy Association, so we're in the online pharmacy world, and our members use both social and domains. But it was very striking to me that 82% believe a domain presence is important when determining when to make a purchase for pharmaceuticals specifically. And the customers that come to us tend to be older adults, often senior citizens. And before they come and make a decision to purchase prescription medications online, they often consult and look for direction from friends and family. And often those friends and family are kids or grandchildren in some cases. So the findings that millennials place more trust in a domain is very significant. And domains allow a company, in order to talk about who they are and to prove their legitimacy and their credibility, and to answer a lot of the questions that consumers have before purchase. Domains also offer the opportunity for people to compare businesses and also to seek other information. I noticed one of the stats that was very high was people go online to read reviews before when they try to confirm the credibility of a business. So, again, that is often done through domains. So there's a lot to be said about this, and it's very encouraging information that there is a diligent and well-informed community out there who are searching and researching and making good decisions before they make purchases.
Yeah, I think, well, at the root of it all is trust. Clearly the survey shows that there's much more trust in a company when it has a dedicated domain name. And another thing that's important too, you have all these platforms today that make it easy to have a presence, whether that's Shopify for e-commerce or Facebook or whatever. If you're using a dedicated domain, you have the flexibility to change platforms without losing your customers, because they're going to the domain, they're not going to the platform. So if you train your customers to go to your domain name and not to look you up on Facebook or something like that, or use a subdomain at another platform, you have the flexibility to change platforms over time and control your customer base at the same time. So it's really an important topic, I think.
Yeah, I think Jeff's highlighting a really good point that, it'd be good to think about it segmenting the benefits to the consumer of having a business with a domain, right? It's more attractive, feels more secure, there's more trust, etc. But also, there's distinct benefits for the company itself, right? The ability to choose different platforms, to not have a certain platform start putting ads up on things that when you're trying to speak to your consumers and people are throwing ads up for a competitor or an unrelated business, all of a sudden you see these conflicts. And if you have control over that, where the eyes are going, that's ultimately very important for that business or organization.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm not quite sure how folks can enter questions since I haven't been on the attendee side of this. But I'm assuming we can. And if you can, please do.
Yeah, I'm going to check the comments to see if we're getting any. I
didn't see any.
Oh, are you seeing Alina's question, Brooke?
Yep.
Okay.
I do. So we were asked if this was the first time collecting this data or if we have metrics against which to measure. This was the first time that we've done this survey. There's also intent to be able to do this on a more global scale. This was, again, of US consumers and just a certain age group. So we would like to expand this, but also it would be nice, and it's intended to be able to measure against this in coming years to see if there are any changing trends that we can notice and work with. Then there was also a question, is the presentation available for download someplace, or the data summaries? This was made available by the DNA. And so it should be up on the DNA's website, both a recording of a webinar we did with this and an article that highlights some of the findings.
Any other questions?
Brooke, if we had to do another survey in the next year, how would you tweak it, given what we know?
Given what we know, I would be interested in digging in more if we wanted to talk about in different instances, what would change, both in the industry and then sort of, I'd like to get a little more granular on different generations. I think that would be interesting.
And I'd say if you want to have influence on what that next survey is, if you're a member of the I2C, you should join the DNA working group. If you're not a member of the I2C, you should consider joining and then joining the DNA working group, because this survey came out of discussions that we have in our regular meetings in that working group. And so you can certainly have influence on the next stages.
Yeah, this was created in partnership with the DNA.
Yeah.
I noticed I wouldn't be the right person to answer this question, but we did get a question with just some information about I2C, if someone wants to speak to that.
I think the I2C's website is extremely informative, and it'll put you in contact. I think Hillary Osborne is principally the membership director there, and she can respond individually to companies and other organizations that are looking to become a member. Adding on to what Jeff said, it's the level of engagement activity with the I2C and the DNA working group is far exceeded my expectations. It's been really, really good. It's a very professional group, and aside from just being able to continue discussions with the people in the DNA sub-working group, it's actually really nice to work with people in other parts of infrastructure, right? To hear their concerns, to see where we have commonalities and where we differ, and making sure that we can remain influential in regulatory and legislative affairs.
So Alvaro, I'll add, I think that was a good question about what will we change. I'll throw it also out to the group. What do you think, like if we were going to do this again or add a part 2, what from this made you want to dig in further on? What would you want to survey consumers about?
We at Black Knight would like to see international consumers surveyed, specifically EMEA. We'd like to know what the attitudes for Irish and other European consumers are towards this.
I agree. I had the same thought of I'd like to see from outside the U.S. how people feel, whether it's very similar or it's different in any way, will be super enlightening.
There's a question here in the chat about do we have data on legacy TLDs versus new? And of course, that's a whole other avenue that could be explored as well at a future time, and perhaps that's something that we can have a discussion about afterwards. But I agree completely. We'd like to gather more information about other parts of the world, and perhaps other demographics as well could be explored.
Yeah, it would be interesting if we could survey only business and organization directors and owners. That'd be perhaps hard to get that sort of grouping of people, but Brooke's the expert. She can tell us if things are too tall.
Oh no,
a
we
path.
could do that.
Yeah. Because I mean, we got obviously the consumer's view, and that's super important. But it'd be interesting to hear from principals at businesses and organizations as well.
And it would be nice to see if there's a gap there, if there is a lot more concern about trust or concern about, or people think social is far more popular and trustworthy than it really is. So it would be neat to see where there are gaps that then we could fill in with that consumer research.
Yeah, and again, I think it's worth reemphasizing. This is not a domains versus social media, because we see the value of them both, and certainly our company, Donuts, we engage in social media, and I see it how effective it can be. But when you're buying from ice cream from the ice cream man, a social media presence is completely legitimate. But if you're going to open up a storefront, you're going to have that infrastructure, professionalism, and uniforms and things like that. These are all hallmarks of being more credible, and domains really serve that function very well.
Yep.
Great.
Alvaro, the last time we did this, you talked about buying heirloom tomatoes in the market square as opposed to buying an automobile, as being sort of a difference between.
It's true, right? Exactly. I mean, what Brooke said really highlights that, right? The higher the income levels and the bigger the purchases, the more people want that those hallmarks of credibility, right?
Yeah, I'll also add that we did see in some of the open ends that people said that they were more understanding of a new small business starting on social, but then they wanted to see them move to a full domain or move to also having a domain as they got larger, more significant, making more significant, taking purchases online, things like that.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a real estate agent, and she drives a pretty nice car. And that's in part to show that, she knows what she's doing. She's
right.
good at what she does. She sells houses. If someone picks you up in an old Datsun pickup from 1983 to try to get you to buy a house, it's not gonna be a great look.
Yep, that's a good point. A good analogy.
All right. What's happening, everybody? That was a great session, and I guess I'm gonna have to go put my Datsun up for sale then. Yeah.
We know you just got
item.
Tesla, JT.
Oh man, well, it's that NFT money. The NFTs paid for my new Tesla, which
hey, domains were the original NFT.
We could get into that whole dialogue, and I would absolutely agree. Now, Andrew Rosner thinks there's enough of a distinction between the two, but I put them all under the umbrella of digital assets, and I actually think that in a lot of ways, domains are the original NFT because they're unique. They're unique identifiers that are effectively, now it's not blockchain, but they're logged online, and they provide the most utility out of any digital asset, even more so than cryptocurrency. So it's like, like we say in Domain Sherpa, all roads lead to domains. And, even with the latest craze in NFTs and crypto, we also say this all the time. It's that, you don't have to pick one or the other. They all fall under the umbrella of digital assets, in my opinion. And also, too, if you are a domain investor or, in any company that it works online, like you have to be aware of what's happening trend-wise, right? And some of the biggest sales that we've seen this year in domains have all been crypto, and not all, but crypto, NFT related, or startups, many of which are either crypto companies, NFT companies, and things like that are buying oneword.coms. And so it all kind of, it all overlaps and comes together. So all under this umbrella and this crazy circus that we're all a part of. So with that,
those NFTs are all clubs, right? They're all clubs. So you should be getting your club for your Bored Apes, right?
They say and I have a couple .clubs and Media Options. We have a lot of really great .club domains. My own personal ones are not as good as the Media Options portfolio, and I know you're not as invested, Jeff, as you once were. But the thing about that, they talk about every NFT involves community, and you really, a community is a club, and so no matter how you want to call it, and even the C in the BAYC is club. So Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, good stuff, guys. Appreciate it. This was a fantastic panel. Appreciate everything you guys brought to the table. And with that, I'll let you guys go because I'm getting the hook over here in the chat telling me we got to wrap up. So
Thank you all.
right.
Yeah.
All right,
Good seeing
thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
So with that, let's see. We are getting close to the end of the day here, which is kind of sad because this has been a really wonderful couple of days. And I have to say, even though this isn't an in-person conference, you know, I've said it a lot of times, NamesCon does an incredible job of recreating some of that live conference experience. And it really will feel like at the end of this thing that we, you know, the conference is over and we're all jumping on planes to go home, except that instead of jumping on planes and buses and trains, we'll be logging off, I guess. Although, do we ever actually log off? Anyway, with that, we've got an awesome session coming up. We are going to finish really strong here. We've got Flip the Script, impactful methods to shift negative perceptions of the domain industry. So this one is near and dear to me as somebody who's worked in domains for the past 15 years. You know, there is no doubt that there is a certain perception among certain people about domain investors and the idea that, you know, domain squatting and things like that, which, you know, I believe are completely, you know, uncalled for. It's like the idea of saying, hey, all land should be available until somebody's ready to build a house on it. But anyway, I don't want to steal any of the thunder of this group that's going to be coming up. So like I've said over and over again, log off, or by logging off, exit this session, click the button on the next session, and we'll see you in a minute for the Flip the Script. Looking forward to it. See you guys in a sec.